the students are trapped in a failed education system. According to Pew Research, the U.S. now ranks 38 out of 70. Master Books tribe. Hope you're having a fantastic week. We really do hope you're having a fantastic week. We just realized as we sat down and looked in the camera that we are all matchy-matchy. It's probably not a word I would have used.
Matchy-matchy.
Why did I?
Twinning.
Matchy-matchy. All right. So, hey, I've been a little bit out of commission, and so I'm sorry if I have a bit of a coughing fit or whatever, but this is like day 15 of being sick. So thankfully I'm on some antibiotics, and then Brittany is the only one willing to come in the room and do a Facebook Live with me today. So
keep my distance.
But I wanted to do a teaching tips because something that I'm seeing more and more is a little bit of a debate will come. You know, this is the time of year when we send out new catalogs or posts are going up and moms are beginning to search. And as they search and they hit the groups, they're hearing things about Master Books, like Master Books isn't enough or it's not as advanced as XYZ curriculum or whatever. And so especially in the early elementary ages. And I just wanted to address it because I think a lot of it is based in ignorance. Some is based in hate. I mean, you know, we're kind of we're an interrupter in the homeschool community. So you know, everything is going along pretty natural. Master Books comes into the scene, and we have different curriculum. It seems easier to do. We gain a lot of customers, and so the market's trying to figure out who is Master Books, what do they stand for, why are they here. Some people that don't make a lot of noise and whatnot. So I'm going to go on a bit of a rant, if I can, about this. Now, what we're going to do is the format's going to be different today. Brittany is here observing comments. If you have questions or comments, please make them. Brittany is watching this. We're going to give 2,500 reward points to those of you joining in the app and 2,500 reward points to those of you who are watching online and on Facebook. So that's
exciting news.
2,500 reward points in each place. So while I'm speaking, feel free to make comments, ask questions. Brittany's going to do a Q&A after the fact. And I won't get to everything today. Today it's just kind of and after I'm able to get a little bit more information, we'll come back to some of this. In fact, I'll be doing a lot more of this in the future months as we really want to help you understand what the method is behind Master Books and why it's proving effective for literally thousands of families. Okay, so when I was a younger man, I was a principal of a private school, and we had it was pre-3, so we had 2 levels of preschool. They had to be potty trained and went to 3rd grade, or to the 3-year-olds, then the 4-year-olds. From that group of 4-year-olds, we worked to draw them into our K program and then up to the 6th grade. And we competed in a very small community, but we had the public school, a Catholic school, and then we had 3 private schools. So it was a community of about 1,600 people that at one time had all these options. Well, how do you stay afloat when you have a school? You stay afloat by tuition, right? And so it's a very competitive environment. And what we wanted to do as a school was I wanted good families, because good families tended to be involved in the education and they would help drive the success of the program. I wanted families that could afford the tuition, and we needed the tuition to pay our teachers, to provide the materials, that type of thing that we had. So I needed that as well. Well, so what you do is you create an environment that is what is your unique selling proposition as a school? How do you compete against the other schools? Some were independent styles, the Catholic system. We had one that was designed more for special needs students. And we had positioned ourselves as one of the premier academic institutions in the community. So if you sent your student to our school, our teachers were going to invest themselves, the curriculum we used, your students were going to be above their counterparts in the community, which would have been public school, Catholic school, and the other private schools. And so I didn't really care as a principal about students who weren't able to make the grade. They could go to the special needs school, or they could go to the public school, or something else. We wanted to attract families and students that were capable of performing academically, because then our scores and the company we kept allowed us to market ourselves as the school that excelled above the other schools. We were the academically superior school. I think I was really good at marketing that, just like I am marketing Master Books. And the school was very successful. And I had a fantastic group of teachers that committed themselves to what we did. And we ended up with some really great families, and it was a success. I say that story to explain curriculums that are designed for schools are designed to help schools do what they need, academic excellence. And they build on a model that allows to be more rigorous than, say, your public school, your typical public school. You want to be able to say, our curriculum is more academically based. Now, in that setting, there is a teacher, and what the teacher can do is tailor the education a bit, right? And what happened a lot in that system was we would blame it on the student or the parents. So if your student is in first grade and they're struggling, it's obvious that that student has some special needs, or the parents aren't doing their part at night, so they would be better suited to be into a special needs program, and we demote them out that way. The students who had developed and were ready to be at that first grade level, they stayed there and were promoted, and so we looked healthy, but we had this system of promotion-demotion. Okay, for homeschoolers, we don't operate this way. Homeschooling, it's not this industrial education, this industrial class system that was set up during the industrial age, where students were able to, what we did was we compartmentalized everybody. You're this age, so you're here. You're this age, so you're here. And then we taught to those ages and try to move everybody through one size fits all, very cookie cutter. That's a system that even President Trump says, was it last week in the State of Union, is the students are trapped in a failed education system. And that's not just him being dramatic. Do you know that according to Pew Research, the U.S. now ranks 38 out of 71 countries in math and 24th in science? I mean, we're 38 out of 71. So anytime we look at an education system like the public education system, or even a public education or a private education system that models itself after our public education system, and we think that somehow they're doing a great job of educating, we need to think again. That's failing. It's not working. There are other countries that are actually looking at the science, looking at early childhood development, and building models like that. I mentioned it last week about Finland, and how Finland is they're waiting until age 7 to enroll students and teach them to read. In a homeschool, we as parents have the ability to customize an education. I have 9 children. Every one of these children was different. We had gifted, we had some that took a little longer to bloom. But what I've seen is they all end up succeeding and doing extremely well. And sometimes we would be fearful and we would stress out. And now I sit back and I think about how much stress our home actually had over some of the students. And then I look at how well they've done as adults. And I'm like, man, they all, like, it it finally clicks and they take off. Now I know that there are families here that have the same experience as what I'm talking about. You've seen this. And so please weigh in. If you have kids that you've graduated and you've seen that, you felt that fear, they're in kindergarten and they don't know how to do multiplication. It's obvious they're going to be failures. They won't be able to even find a job at the local fast food restaurant. What are we going to do? Okay. So, as homeschoolers, sorry, I'm passionate. Can you tell?
I know. Breathe. You're good. You're going to a coughing fit.
As homeschoolers, we want to tailor our education. Every student is unique, and so we can watch our students as they develop. Now, let me give you two. Like I say, there's going to be a lot more information coming because I think it's so important for you, especially as you embrace a model like Master Books, that we suggest not teaching foundation phonics till first grade. And I know that there are people who are like, no, we need to do it for our 4-year-old because my 4-year-old is capable, and some 4-year-olds are capable, but not all of them are. And so we want to slow things down. And sometimes people say, well, it's a more gentle approach. It really is not. It is gentler approach, but there's a lot of opportunity for the brain to grow. So let me give you I'll read a couple of things here. In 2006, Dr. Alesha Datar, a social scientist at the RAND Corporation, conducted a study comparing children entering kindergarten on time, quote unquote, to those whose parents held them out for a year. Professor Datar found that entering kindergarten a year older significantly boosted the test scores at the kindergarten entry, which we would probably expect. But more importantly, entering older implies a steeper test score trajectory during the first 2 years of school. So everybody thinks they're 5, we need to get them in school. His finding was the people who actually held them back a year, the students actually performed better, but there's reasons for that. So I want to go into that. I'll do one more. More than 35 years ago, Professor Ken Hopkins at the University of Colorado and Glenn Brack at the University of Minnesota studied the stability of IQ scores in the same children by testing them each year over a 10-year period, from when they entered first grade through 11th grade. The results showed that the scores of the kids in their sample were highly variable, meaning unstable from year to year in the first, second, and third grade, and they were relatively variable after the child finished the third grade. After that, when the children were around age 10 or 11, the scores became much more stable. There's science that supports this. First, second, and third grade, preschool, kindergarten, first, second, and third grade. Okay, here's what happens. When we're born, you may think you're born with all your brains. You aren't. You're only born with a quarter of the brains that you're going to have. Now, I'm not a neurologist. I encourage you to check out what I'm saying because I may not have all the details, but I think you're going to find it pretty consistent with what I'm saying. And I think if you start studying for yourself, early childhood development and doing the best for your student, you're gonna find what I'm saying. This is the research that other countries are finding, that education is finding, but not the model that schools are taking. Okay, so you're born with a quarter of your brain. During that time, your brain is beginning to develop and grow, and about the time 3 to 4 years happens, a child would have about 80% of the brain is developed at 4. 80% at 4. 3 or 4, depending on what you look at. That cerebral cortex, I can't hear right. My ears are plugged. Continues to develop. Now, when a student is stressed, if there's early childhood trauma or stress or anxiety, it produces those hormones, that cortisol hormones, right? When that happens, what happens is other parts of the brain, like the brain stem and the parts of the brain that focus on flight and all of that, that part of the brain actually expands and gets bigger because the body is always under those stresses, or the brain is always under those stresses. And the cerebral cortex actually is hurt because it isn't growing. It's not what's focused on. So sometimes we have our students, we begin putting a lot of pressure on them. They start to cry, melt down, those types of things. Their frustration is they don't have the knowledge base or the experience base to even do that. And as a student continues to develop, as they get more experience, as they get more just real knowledge, their brain begins to grow and these processes happen. It's up to age, actually your frontal cortex, I think it's 25 to 30. You're still developing the prefrontal cortex. This is where all the processing and logic and ability to problem solve and all of that is taking place. So we take these kids who are 4 years old and 3 years old and 5 years old who are still very much in a developmental phase, and we start imposing on them complicated procedures. And when students, because we're beginning, we want them to be able to recite information. We want them to be able to do a lot of facts and all of these types of things, but their brain isn't ready for that. And that's really why the first, K through third grade is such a developmental time. And some students are faster than others, and some students just take a little bit longer. So maybe you have a student that does exceptional and they learn to read. Your students will let you know. And see, I love reading the stories about students. Somebody posted in the early kind of the announcement about trying a math curriculum, saying it wasn't enough, trying 2 more math curriculums, a lot of frustration, coming back to math lessons for a living education, and everything begins to click and it really takes off and makes a difference. Well, 6 months to a 6-year-old is 10%, well, not quite 10%, but it's a significant amount of a child's life. And especially when we're talking about brain science and how the brain is developing, in 6 months, there's a lot of connections being made in a young student's life. And so we need to give opportunity for our children to learn. And they learn by playing, and they learn by creating, and they learn by interacting and talking to us. I'm reading a phenomenal book. I haven't read it enough to announce what it is, to vet it. But it's so, he's a speech pathologist, and he talks about, he's from Vanderbilt, and he's talking about development of children at a young age, and how even children beginning to learn phenoms, to be able to do phonics later, how important it is for parents. What they're doing is a child is watching a parent. They're seeing it pronounced. They're listening to it. They're putting that word in context. Us reading to them, us speaking to them. We're actually teaching language and phonics when they're very young, before we ever sit down and do a book. What's detrimental is when we sit down and we want to do the book, but we haven't given them enough development time and enough time for the connections to be made so that the book actually connects to their experience and the brain can begin to form around that. So when I hear somebody say master books 1st grade or kindergarten or 2nd grade, I want to be able to understand what compared to what are they, when you say XYZ curriculum is more advanced, but why is it more advanced? What is the reason that it was developed that way? Because the more science I find, the more I see that the master books method, especially for early elementary, matches and aligns with why students are succeeding. The families who've embraced it and discovered it, that's why their students are succeeding. And book knowledge is just a small part of student development. If you're a 1st, 2nd, or 3rd grader, you need to know what dirt feels like. You need to know what a worm tastes like. It's not everyone.
Yeah, not everyone.
But you need to experience life, right? And the book knowledge is only going to do so much, and we're so caught up as a society towards taking a test, for some bureaucracy, as opposed to actually allowing our children the opportunity to learn. Now I see other posts that say, well, master books is light and my kids, I don't know what to do with them. Well, I'll tell you what to do. Get them off the TV. Get them off YouTube. Get your kids off technology, because it's not helping. It doesn't help the brain grow and develop. Get them building, get them creating, get them inventing, get them playing, get them out and play, give them experiences. You know, Tim Hawkins, who talks about the homeschool family, and they're like, wow, this is what the real world feels like. We need to get out of our homes, and we need to do things. And I'm going to say this, and some of you may not like it, and I'm guilty as well. This device is consuming our attention, and I have a pretty picture, Mom. It's a distraction, and it's taking us from these important connections that need to be made with our children. And I think especially for the generation of young moms, the millennial moms and millennial dads, who right now, your kids need you. They need the interaction, the communication. They need to do things. Be careful that this doesn't steal and become the biggest handicap your family has, because we're so distracted. But this is what's so important, right? The books are only going to give us so much. They're only going to help us. They're only going to take us so far. That in the early ages especially, there's studies that show that when students actually go and do, like if they're working towards academic achievement and the test, they're testing students and pushing them, they will do better at, they'll score on the test versus students who are out playing. But as they move into 4th and 5th grade, that can actually become counterproductive, and those students begin to struggle. From what I'm seeing, a lot of it is the brain actually isn't even working the way it was designed to work. And the students who had more opportunity to play and create, invent, and develop their motor skills, even like gross motor skills, the brain, we are fearfully and wonderfully made. Anybody who doesn't believe that there was a creator who created us has no common sense at all. We are so fearfully and wonderfully made. And the brain, my ability to see, to smell, to taste, to process information, to have all of the capacity to do that is so interwoven. And sometimes I think we just, in the homeschool market, we think we'll just take a curriculum and we'll just educate because that's what we do. And we don't give enough thought to childhood development and giving children the room, working with them. As parents, we know when our kids are ready to read because they take an interest in it, and we can start doing that. Now, there are kids that are going to be lazy and kids that are going to fight, and strong-willed children. That's a topic for another day. But typically what we see with a lot of Master Books families is once kids get excited about learning, they actually take off. I love the post last week where somebody said, I wasn't expecting my kid to cry on the days off because they're so excited about school. That's a brain that is ready to learn, and it's not afraid. There's not anxiety. There's not cortisol. There's more of a dopamine hit, and they're excited about it. And so that's my encouragement. I'm going to be talking more about this in teaching tips because I think it's important for all of us to understand that. And I think it's important for the conversation to happen because I watch this. Somebody will come in and they'll ask the question, what about this curriculum compared to this curriculum? And I'll see 20 people explain their success story. Then one person will come in and say, didn't work for my kid, it wasn't as advanced. And that the new mom will draw right to the one negative comment and say, wow, that's what I was afraid of. For that one student, maybe that curriculum was working. But oftentimes what I hear is, well, the student is crying and frustrated. But as a mom, my fear is that, I'm not a mom, so I'm speaking third person.
Your fear is?
My fear is that my student isn't going to be smart. They're not going to succeed. And so our fears drive us rather than trusting the relationship we have with our families. What?
As a mom, our fears,
I'm not a mom.
In third person.
I'm not a mom, and I'm losing my voice. So, okay. So I'm going to stop there, and let's do some Q&A.
Awesome. So some people were having a hard time tuning into the Facebook, so a lot of people went over to the app.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so some of the questions I've got. Sadie asked early on, she said, I'm new. I've taught ACE, used some Abeka and Landmark. I'm very interested. Is there a lot of visuals, hands-on type of learning?
I think it depends on the curriculum that you're in. We're not an industrialized education, so we're very eclectic. We have multiple solutions for different subjects because we don't believe there's one size fits all. So a little bit, it can be a little confusing trying to find what works best for your student. I think there is a lot of application, and that's what students are enjoying. So if you're used to ACE, which we know ACE well, I think it's definitely it's more bite-sized and it's more engaging.
I agree. Hannah in the app asked, she said, thank you for all the research-backed resources and references. Could you all post references and links to those studies so that us as parents could reference them later? It would be greatly appreciated.
So what we're working on some sales sheets that actually will provide some information for master books, and that's where a lot of this is coming from me. Every time I pull up a new study and I'm reading through, or someone says, well, have you looked at the way Finland is doing education? And I read all about the philosophy and how they went down the wrong roads and then they're coming back, or Germany and what they're doing. That's gross motor skills. I got a couple of links. A couple people have sent me some things on gross motor skills. And you're just like, wow, the science actually is really even more in support of what we're doing than I anticipated. So, yes. Now, I'm not going to put links out of, it just needs vetted. So, there will be stuff to come because I want the people who use our curriculum, if you're a mom who loves master books, you're going to tell your friends to try master books and they'll trust you. But we need to know that what we're doing is solid. And so the marketing really that we're working towards is making sure that you have the tools that when somebody does say, well, I don't know if it's enough, you're able to say, well, based on the academic philosophy that I as a mom ascribe to, I believe in a little bit slower start while the brain is developing and allowing the cerebral cortex to develop and gain experience and then build knowledge on top of that. So you actually have the tools to be able to tell the naysayer, what are you talking about? Like, what science do you know? Okay.
Awesome. Jenna asked, she said, we are just starting math lessons and my 12-year-old truly hates math, but I'm praying this will help her. Many years of tears, all because I've been afraid of failing. Any tips on getting her past this hatred of math and encouraging her?
That's my first time.
Yeah, you have started to lose your voice a little bit. Hopefully you can get through the rest of this.
Don't be afraid to back up a little bit and let her experience some wins. Sometimes what we see is a mom will come in and she knows the kid is struggling, but she feels like if she places her back a grade or two, that it will just be a massive failure, and now she'll be even further behind. I know that there are people in the group. There was a post, my mind just drew a blank. There was a post that went up last week or this week. I remember at the Cincinnati convention meeting with this mom and her daughter. She explained it. She went back, I think, a couple grades, allowed her to build her confidence. Her daughter started doing really well in math and has now just applied to college and had no problem. So don't be afraid to let her go back a little bit to gain some confidence. Also, celebrate the wins. Don't allow, fear is contagious. And so as parents, sometimes we have to be careful that we don't bring our anxiety to their experience. That when they get something and get excited, let's get excited with them. Let's mirror and encourage that behavior rather than being frustrated. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of different ways we learn. There's different. Sometimes we have to be creative with our kids, but I think just enjoying the process of learning and is really important.
Awesome. Christine asked, how do I watch previous live videos?
YouTube, we have a Master Books channel on YouTube, and all of these videos get moved over to the YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube, type in Master Books, you will have a plethora of videos to watch. Hopefully that was the right word.
Plethora.
I don't trust anything right now.
Kaylee said, I'm scared. I'm going to Becca DVD mom, and I'm the one saying that it's going to be enough. I guess because I've loaded them so long that Master Books feels so light. Help me overcome my fear, Randy.
Well, if you're doing well in Becca and it's working for your family, I don't know. Why would you switch? You don't need to switch. So I often say, if it's
there's somebody
up above us
in the attic.
That's funny. If you're seeing some challenges and the learning isn't as fun, it doesn't seem like they're retaining and that type of thing. I mean, there are so many families that have switched. What I would encourage you to do is look at the Master Books catalog. New catalog is arriving at homes now. I think it's beautiful. Okay, I got distracted. Look at the catalog with your student and pick one subject. Just pick a fun science or pick a fun history. I mean, not that Rebecca doesn't have fun subjects, but just pick one subject and try it with your student. You don't need to jump all in, and see what they think. See if you watch their eyes. Like, do they get excited about learning things that are actually that they can apply, not just knowledge, but that they're actually learning about things that they're questioning. So that would be my recommendation. Would be try one.
Awesome. Gabriella asks, she said, my sons are getting frustrated with reading comprehension on language lessons too. He can't retain the info of the stories on Mondays, yet can read a whole book and narrate back no problem. What can I do to help?
It's a good question. Some may be interest. Now, one thing you can look at is, okay, the goal of language lessons is to make sure students can do that. Maybe the language lesson gives you the format of what you're looking for, and he's doing that in the book, so let him do that. And just be excited because you're seeing him do the skill that he needed in the book. Mm-hmm. Now, I know that's hard because we like to, cross our T's and dot our I's, or some of you do, like to do that. And so if suddenly there's an exercise in the book and he's not engaged there, but use that as a template. And if he's like engaged in reading over here and he's narrating back to you, maybe don't force him in it over here. Just encourage that and get excited by it. It's not a failure. He's actually doing what he needs to do. He's just not doing it here because it's not that exciting to him.
Right. Over the Facebook Live, Girlie asked, she said, what do you think is the root of the problem when we think that what we're doing is not enough?
I think it's fear. I know it. I've experienced it. So has Kristen. We've graduated 5 students. And even now, I have 4 in school today learning. And there are times that I will overreact and panic because they don't seem engaged enough, or the handwriting isn't neat enough, or whatever. And I think, I think that's one. I think the second is when I gave my comparison about what we're comparing it to, I'm no longer in a school setting. I have nothing to prove to anybody that my kids are 2 grades ahead of their counterparts. As long as I'm demonstrating growth and I see them maturing and growing and I'm preparing them for life, I got 12 years to do it. So I think some of it too is we compare ourselves to a system that's designed to do something different than what I want to accomplish. And then I think sometimes we need to do the research. So, and I'm going to post this probably tomorrow. There's a website called Academic Excellence. They do online CAT testing, which is the California Achievement Test. And it's $25 per student. You take the test online. I think you can have your scores within like 20 minutes. And I contacted them and I said, hey, is there anything we could do for Master Books customers? Because we really want to encourage people to test. And so we have a coupon code that they set up for anybody, for us. We don't get anything from it. It's just we want to encourage people to test their students. Don't live in the dark. Don't live in fear, right? Know what you're facing. So the coupon I think is FIRSTCAT, FIRSTCAT. I'll post that later though, in another post. But I'd encourage you to test your students. And now they don't do that until like third grade, I don't think. I don't think so. Again, because up to third grade, so much is happening in the brain development and all of that. But that's like become educated, right? And learn about child development. Learn about the way the child's brain. Become the expert. There's so much information, and it's so easy to get information. And my commitment to you as customers and in this group is we're going to do our best to educate you guys. Educate you guys. I got my raps. So that you have information. So that fear of am I doing enough? Is it enough? We can help put that to rest.
And Amber asked, she said, I love the slower approach. Are there any concerns with meeting state standards?
Well, state standards are important. And I think one thing all of the authors are confident is we follow a scope and sequence that goes along with state standards. It just looks different. We don't do it for an hour. We do it for 20 minutes to 30 minutes. We use, like even math, okay? Here's the deal with math. Like I said, the brain is developing. You can teach a bunch of facts and figures, or you can relate it to other parts of the brain and thinking. And so when you tell a story and you relate the math to a story, or you use applications different, you're using a more holistic approach involving more of the brain and engaging more of the brain. And studies are showing that when you slow down the learning until the brain is ready, then teach appropriate information and allow the students to go, that students are performing higher on tests. And I think we saw it last year. We had a lot of people coming in and they were just concerned about it. And so we said, do this CAT scores and post it. If we're wrong, people will post and say, oh my goodness, my kids are a year behind. That's not what we saw. We saw people saying, I was shocked, my kids were ahead. And so we're not afraid of people taking tests. We want you to take the test. I think it's great. Right? If you're doing testing, then at least this is where my child is. Maybe we need to strengthen up math. Maybe we need to strengthen test taking, because that's a big skill. It really is. Test taking is hard, right? Mm-hmm. Some people struggle with test taking. So that's something that's good to have. But then we have an academic record that we can track over the time that we know that we've monitored it, and we don't have to live in this, oh boy. It's kind of like if I've got this bad pain, I'm one to talk. If I've got this bad pain, I don't want to go to the doctor because I don't want the doctor to say something's wrong with me, versus let's just go to the doctor, figure out what's wrong, and then fix it. So, okay.
Over in the app, AK asks, what do you do when a 10-year-old who is bright and has done a lot better in math after switching to master books, but whose attitude is always an issue? Depending on the day and her mood, her most hated or loved subject changes. I can't seem to get through to her that I'm not asking a lot and we can't play all day.
Yeah, I know we've done videos on that, motivating students and whatnot. There's so many variables in this. Outside influences play a part. I know with one of my students, just watching a television program I've mentioned before, like Arthur, had a huge impact on our home. And just cutting out the program Arthur.
Yeah, you're good. Carrie Bailey said, yes, I was never a good test taker. Thank you, Carrie. I don't know why I can't talk today. I'm not even sick.
Yeah. I think
you need to probably wrap up before you.
I got a few more in me. I think it's complicated, and I think every student's going to be different. They're going to go through different seasons, and they're going to have different interests and times. Mm-hmm. And sometimes how we motivate them is just going to take a little bit different approach and some growth hacking. Sometimes reward is just what's going to be to work. I don't think every student is going to love every subject all the time. But once we know they're at a place where they can do it, and it's not a part of the developmental issues, now it's more just a part of motivation. Generally, that spills over into all areas of life, cleaning room, whatever. And we have to address that as a bigger life issue.
Right. Nashville will be my first homeschool conference. I was thinking of bringing my daughter with me to look at curriculum. Is that a good idea or not?
Absolutely a good idea. Of course, I don't know that your daughter's age. If she's 3, might be over her head. But a lot of, literally over her head because the tables are that high. Thank you for laughing.
You're welcome. I'm sure there were a lot of other people who were laughing, but...
I think I'm funnier than I am. I think it's great to have your kids look at it. What do you think of this curriculum? Do you enjoy this? That a lot of parents bring their kids in and let them have input in the year. In fact, in the beginning of homeschooling, I don't know that Kristen did as much, but like by the time you were in high school, you were having a say in almost all the courses you chose.
And I love that. And that also makes it so I wasn't like, if I got halfway through the year and I'm like, I don't like this curriculum, well, it's not, I can't just say, well, it's your fault, you chose it, I chose it. So there was more of a push for me to be like, just suck it up and do the work because I chose it, so.
Right. You were invested in it now. And if
right,
you didn't
exactly.
do it, having mom say,
well you chose this and I told you might like this one more. So I don't know. But I enjoyed choosing my own. So my first grader tested in 3rd math and language. Where should I start him in level 3? That's one that we'll probably post that one in the app and then we'll get an answer on that one.
Yeah.
Mrs. Thomas said, I was just going to ask, at what age do you recommend testing?
Well, I think 3rd grade is when testing starts typically. And then some states mandate it. New York State used to mandate testing. At $20 a student for an online test, if you can do it that way, and just get a good feel for how they're doing. Sometimes the students would blow off the year and their scores would be awful. And we knew we had to just focus a little bit on some things. But, I think 3rd grade would be my recommendation. Awesome. Seems like some people are having trouble getting into the Facebook. So.
Yeah, so all the questions are being asked over in the app, all except for 1 or 2 over there.
Okay.
I already got to them. Is Master Books good for visual learners?
Yes. I think Master Books is good for a very holistic approach. So visual learners and kinesthetic and audio and whatnot.
6 Strong said, if I want to prep my child for college but they struggle with higher abstract maths, what do you suggest for high school maths?
I'd say some depends on the age. Sometimes students, they're not ready for it. Their frontal cortex is still developing, and so maybe they need just more practice, more experience. I think that there's different things you can do. I know the one post earlier this week, she actually went back and did principles of math as like a pre-algebra, and that worked.
Awesome. I'll ask you one more that's more like specifically related to this topic. Any of the other ones that anybody had asked in there for specific curriculums, you can post that make it a post in the app or on Facebook, and then we can help get you answers there.
Yep.
Quiverful, this was a question that was asked pretty early on. She said, how would you handle a kiddo that wants to do bookwork but it's too young? He just turned 4. We were doing Simply K, but it's taken about 2 weeks per section.
Just take your time. Let them do coloring sheets. Let them do sheets. I don't think it has to be done. Find things that you can do that are doable for him, but I don't think there needs to be a structure. Let him work at it when he wants to, and when he doesn't want to, don't put pressure on him.
Yes.
Good?
Awesome. Yep.
All right. I think we probably need to.
Yeah, you are losing your voice. So
I feel it coming.
We need to choose some reward point.
We can go on. We will post right after this. Brittany will choose 2 people in the one in the app and one on Facebook, and we will announce it here within the next few minutes.
Awesome.
Okay.
Cool.
All right. Thank you guys. I hope it was a blessing. and there will be more on this. If you have questions, comments, I want to hear it. I want to know what are you wrestling with, and how can we help? How can we help you? How can we be a blessing to you like you are to us? All right. God bless you guys. We'll talk to you next week.
Bye.